Hey everybody, Noma Langam Shali Moses here with themochamoguls.com. I'm back with Dr. John Beckem from personalfinanceblueprint.com. How are you doing today, Dr. Beckem?
I'm doing excellent. How are you doing, Noma?
Very good, thank you. So we have another question for you to tackle. You're our resident personal finance expert, entrepreneur, and educator. And I always say I have a front row seat, but here we go.
All right.
So this question came in when I solicited questions from my audience about how they can basically get information from a personal finance expert. So somebody said this, okay. He gives a disclaimer. Here's a loaded question. Black people in America during the days of the various Black Wall Street, quote unquote, Black Wall Street communities across the nation practiced collective economics and embodied the fundamentals of generational wealth building. In fact, many of the immigrant communities who came to America at that time emulated what they saw Black people doing for their own benefit. What do you believe caused Black people to historically lose or forget the teachings about collective economics and generational wealth building that they formerly embodied? So if I could take the liberty of kind of summarizing it a little bit, he's basically saying Black people used to know how to make money and create generational wealth, and for the most part, they don't now. So what changed?
Wow.
Loaded, yeah.
Yeah, it's a loaded question. There's so many great aspects. So, from what you disseminated, they used the word Black Wall Street in quotations. So, Black Wall Street was actually a real place that was in Oklahoma, right outside the suburbs of Tulsa. It was actually in Greenwood, Oklahoma. And it was a block, maybe a block or two, and it was thriving Black businesses. So door to door, so from building to building, Black businesses. And then, unfortunately, it was burned down in the early 1920s, by very racist, prejudiced individuals, KKK and so forth. But it's the concept. So not actually, we lost the location as Black individuals, right? But more importantly, I believe Blacks have lost the concept and the principles necessarily to rebuild and the reasons why we had it. So I think that's what the question is kind of alluding to. So let's kind of go back and look at some historical treaties. So what happened? You have slavery that take place, and then after slavery, you have the Emancipation Proclamation, and then more importantly, we got into segregation, right? So that's kind of where this really took off. So because of segregations, Blacks couldn't go to the same restaurants as whites, or if they did, they had to go to the back door, the kitchen, right? They couldn't drink from the same water fountains. They couldn't go to the same schools. They couldn't to go to the same retail stores, right? You couldn't go to a J.C. Penney's or Hudson's or whatever the name brand of that particular time was. Blacks couldn't go to hotels. They couldn't go to the Ritz-Carlton or the Hilton and get a room. Most of the time, they went to people's houses and people put them up as they traveled. And so what happened, Blacks started creating their own businesses out of necessity. And so because Blacks couldn't stay in a white hotel, Blacks created their own hotels. Start off as motels, hotels, or inns, right? But it still was a place of residence for a temporary visit, whether you was traveling through town. Blacks could not shop at the white grocery store, so they created their own grocery stores. They created their own convenience stores. They created their own boutiques, that sold clothing and different things of that nature. And so we see that this economics were created out of necessity. Because they could not go to the alternatives, or they was not wanted by the whites. Number one, they couldn't go. If they went, they had to suffer beatings and things, possibly lynching and death. And so these businesses was created out of necessity, and they learned how to almost barter or utilize, patronize one another. So if I own a retail store, and blacks came to do business with me. If I need to purchase something for my retail store, I couldn't go to the white hardware store. I would go to the black-owned hardware store, right? So I would buy lumber or whatever I needed. That person who owned the black lumber store, if they needed food and supplies, they would go to the black-owned grocery store because that's the only place they can go. And so now you start to see the black dollar begin to circulate amongst the black businesses, and that's where it stayed. So it would travel an average of 7 times or more before it actually leave that community. And so by doing that, the business owners were then able to have philanthropic endeavors within that community. They built schools, they built churches within the black communities. They helped people get houses, because they couldn't go to the banks and get a house. So they would come out and donate lumber, donate time, help them build their house. Different skilled workers who were blacks would donate their time and expertise to get things done. And so not only do you see the blacks patronizing one another, the dollar staying within the community, now you saw that dollar being utilized within the community to help the individuals. So what happened after the civil rights law was passed and segregation supposedly ended? So now all of the blacks who were patronizing black businesses ran and went to the white companies, right? So where they were banned from going, they were discriminated, sometimes at a point of death or hangings or beatings, being jailed, police call it. Now that the law has changed, they ran right to the same organizations who said we didn't want you in the first place. They still didn't want them, but they would take their dollars. And so they perceived that these stores and shops were better than what they always had, which was black. And so because of that, the black businesses began to close down. And so they were now patronizing the big box stores, the big grocery stores that were predominantly white owned, and white people worked there. You couldn't even get a job there, but they would go and spend their money there. So over time, that concept of having your own and patronizing your own and having that dollar now help the individuals in that community was lost. And so from generation to generation, blacks became the greatest purchasers in the country, but they didn't hold on to their money. So as quick as they got money, they ran to white organizations and they spent their dollars. And if you go and track even now, looking at the gross domestic product and how much money is spent, blacks as a whole are the largest expenditures of income. We buy billions and billions of dollars of clothing that does not have our name on it. So blacks are quick to wear, a shirt or a pair of pants that has someone else's last name on it that does not look like you, or purchase the gym shoe, or and the list goes on. And so what was being taught from father and mother down to the child, take over the family business, that was taught to the grandchild, take over the family business, was lost. So instead of becoming creators of wealth, they became more creators of debt, going out and being able to purchase, whether they use cash or use credit to get the different things that once would be purchased inside of the black community.
The things that are quote unquote supposed to be better.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people talk more about the fact that much of Black Wall Street was actually burnt down. That process that you described took place. Yeah. So are you asserting that even if none of it had been burnt down, that it still is a process that would have taken place where, because people had been shut away from something, now that they had access to it, they would have gone anyway, even if nothing had been burnt down?
Right. So, Black Wall Street was only one small town. It was Greenswood, Oklahoma, which was a suburb of Tulsa, right? But all through the other part of America, all the other states, the concept still remained, right? So if we look at just now taking the actual Black Wall Street, this time and place of 1921 in the suburbs of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and look at what is happening throughout the whole country, as soon as the segregation ended and civil rights was passed, now you have blacks going to Caucasian businesses and supporting them through their dollars, even though they didn't you know, didn't want them to be there. And if they bought, they want her spend your money and get out, you know. And so it's the principle um, of passing a business from, you know, the grandfather to the father to the grandkids and so forth that was lost. And it was the principle and ideal of saying, hey, now that we have black businesses who have black owners, those black owners give back to black communities, you know, through doctors, lawyers. We send our own to education. We pay for it. We help build residences. We build garages. We gave back in schools and scholarships. We built churches. We built libraries that was in our own community. So now if you're spending all your dollars in a white community owned by white business owners, you have to beg for them to turn around and then utilize the dollars that is profit to come back and give into the black community. So blacks as a whole have lost the concept of supporting our own to help our own to supporting someone else and then begging them to help our own.
Right.
And we see that still being emulated today in 2017.
So, okay, so that was kind of the process of how all this kind of, I'm trying to make our screen show both of us. Okay. So this was the process for basically what happened. So we're now back to today. There are, and I know them, Black people who still really believe that they need to build something and they want to pass it down to their children. You're one of those people. I'm one of those people. So what is it that distinguishes us who firmly hold this belief and don't just talk about it and actually go into the day and day and apply that into our lives? What is it that distinguishes us from the people who are still in that mindset of, you know, kind of just get money and it's gone as soon as it comes in, and you're just in that seesaw motion of getting it and it just going?
Number one is perception. Number two is desire. And number three is drive, initiative, right? So the perception, you know, I said that first. So the perception is I don't want my children to only live hand to mouth, you know, paycheck to paycheck. I don't want them to grow up and just work for someone else. So I took the onus of creating something where they would never, ever have to work for someone else. You know, they have a company, they have opportunities. They don't have to go and beg for, hey, you know, I want to have this position, I want this position, and this is, you know, my career. They can do that within the family organization that's already tried, true, and very successful. So all the opportunities are there. And then they can determine what they want to do with their time. No longer are they exchanging time for dollars. And so now they can say, okay, this is the standard of lifestyle that I want, and this is how I can better utilize my time, whether it's giving back to society, helping community, or even raising other sons and daughters to be a positive asset to society, right? And so that's a great feeling, and it's a great addition to our society in which we live in. So I talked about perception. So that's a different perception, right? I perceive something differently than someone else as far as what I want generationally, even after I leave this earth, what I want to still happen. A legacy, if you will. Another is drive, initiative, right? So everyone has the same opportunity. And so I remember I worked years for a company, and I won't name the name of the company. But it was getting time. I was getting ready to leave that company because I wanted to pursue other aspects. And I went in and I saw the CEO, the owner of the company, and I sat across from them. And you know what I saw?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. It was no different than me versus them, right? So opportunities always exist. You know, you create the life that you want. You don't like your life, change it. And you have that capability. So, and so understanding that it was no different, I say, hey, if this person can accomplish the things that they set out for themselves, I too can also do that. And so I'm from Detroit, and you know, I was raised in a neighborhood that drug infested, crime, and so forth. And so I had two options. Everything comes back to decisions. Number one, I could look at my environment situation and say, well, I'm just a product of my environment, right? And so I follow the same suit. Or I can say, well, this is my environment and I don't want this, and I'm going to use my environment as a catapult to get somewhere else, right? So I desire others. And because I know where I come from, that picture is ever ingrained in my head. So I don't want to go back there. I don't want to be there. I don't want my children to be there. I don't want my children's children to be there, right? So it's a motivation. It's a catapult to constantly keep me engaged and keep that drive and fire to go somewhere different, right? Life is like a game of Uno, right? So Uno is something that I grew up playing with the family. And so in this game of Uno, depending on how you're playing, you're either dealt 5 or 7 cards. So we go with 5 cards. Mm-hmm. So you're dealt 5 cards, and it comes from the dealer. That's kind of like life, right? So I have no influence on the 5 cards that I was dealt. I have no influence. I can't pick them. I can't choose them. Kind of like life, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't have a decision of who your parents were going to be. You didn't have any influence on what color you were going to be born, or whether you was going to be male or female, or the environment in which you was going to be raised. You had no choice. But in the game of Uno, I could take my 5 cards and I can play those 5 cards to the best of my ability. And by doing that, I can win, right? So I can trade this in, I can get other cards, and I can keep on to actually I win the game. And so just because we all start off with no influence on sex that we're born, color, creed, nationality, environment, that doesn't have to be an excuse for me. I can actually have the drive to say, you know what? These are the cards that I was played, and we all have some type of talent and gift, and I'm going to maximize it and use it for the greatest life that I want to build for myself and for my family.
Right.
So that's the difference.
So perception and drive are very powerful, because it doesn't leave you much room for victim.
Right. And the last thing, I said perception drive is implementation, right? So you got to implement, you got to put in the work, you got to put in the time. I worked and put myself through school, so I went to the military. I went from active duty to reserves. I was doing the reservist thing. I was working in an assembly plant, working 40 to 60 hours a week, and I was going to school at night, right? And so what I did was, we had 3 breaks. So we had a 30-minute lunch break, and then we had a 15-minute break before, in the morning, and we had a 15-minute break in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And so what I did was I got some empty boxes, and I turned those boxes over, and when the line would break down, I was doing homework, Mm-hmm. and then sometimes instead of going on a lunch break, everybody else went to lunch, I stayed right in my area and I did homework. I studied, I read, I did homework. I had the opportunity to work ahead on the assembly line. I could go down 7 cars and build up, so the cars would just run and I don't have to do anything for at least 7 cars. And so that's implementation, right? So mm-hmm. I said I wanted to implement these things. And then when it came to, businesses and investing the same 9 yards, is you have the drive, but it has to be implemented. You got to put the drive in the right area. So I researched. I got mentors who had already accomplished what I wanted. And I wasn't looking for a handout. I was looking for information, right? Tell me how you did it. Give me the stories. If I can build upon your successes and avoid all your failures, I'm already ahead of the game. And that's life. It's based upon what you want to do.
So you said in a prior segment that, basically, if you're going to build wealth, it's about 80% behavior, which basically is your habits, and then 20% is knowledge.
Absolutely.
Really, what we're saying here is I personally am giving my audience and people who have access to me the knowledge by bringing in an expert who's giving them the information, right? Uh-huh. Now it's up to them through their behavior to implement the knowledge that has been given to them. But somewhere along the line, people get the knowledge or the information, but there's no implementation, right? And
Absolutely.
You're not an expert in human behavior, and neither am I, and although I do like studying human beings. So we can only really kind of talk intelligently about it, but I want to hear your thoughts. What creates that distance between somebody who gets the information and then they implement it and they create something, and another person who says they want the information, they get the information, and there's no implementation?
Well, that has a lot to do with initiative, right? A person taking ownership for their own life and becoming a stakeholder in their own life and the life that they build. So, if you want to change, then you have to change what you're doing. You can't say, I want a different life and I won't change it, but I'm just going to maintain what I'm doing, that's insanity. It really is. And so I would say initiative, I would say never give up. There's been plenty of opportunities that I've been told no on different things that I'm pursuing. But I took it with a grain of salt. Who are you to determine what I can and cannot have? Right. That's for me to decide. That's for myself and God to come upon agreement to say, hey, this is part of my destiny. It's part of my purpose. No one individual can decide that. It's totally up to you. And until a person takes that type of ownership and become a stakeholder in their own life, it's not going to happen. We talked about human behavior, right? And so even though I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a psychiatrist, but one thing I know about human behavior, 9 times out of 10, they're going to take the easiest road out. And so a person who wants different, you're not looking for the easiest road. I'm looking for the most productive and efficient road, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm looking at outcomes. And that's what I judge by, I wanted this. Do I have it or I don't? And there's a lot of words that I began to eliminate from my vocabulary. Like, I don't use the word try. How do you try to go somewhere? You went there or you didn't. So, there's no try in my vocabulary. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. It's just that simple. And so you begin to understand the power of words and how they influence your behavior. And then you say, okay, well, I have to maintain doing something a certain amount of days. And I think the number is about 21. That's what I use as an average. And then it actually become a part of my lifestyle. And I'm not forcefully trying to force myself to do something. And that's the key. I want things that are good for me to become part of my lifestyle naturally, right? So I had to force it for a while. I had to take the initiative. I had to make it happen. But over time, it actually just become a part of my lifestyle. And that's part of the key, right? Getting more things that naturally fit into your environment, naturally fits to my strengths and the skills that I have, that naturally fit into the standard of living that I want. And then it becomes sustainable.
Right. So going back to the original question before we finish off, so would you say that you can take that big question about there being one major Wall Street, right, Black Wall Street, burnt down, and then after that, there was no Wall Street. You could take that to an individual and say that a person built something or tried to do something, they hit an obstacle, and then they use that obstacle to say, it burnt down, I can't do it, or whatever it is. Uh-huh. And then compare that to another person who obviously sets out to do something, they hit an obstacle, and they get back up and continue going.
Right. So I would say now that Black Wall Street is not a place. You are Black Wall Street. So I say, hey, I am Black Wall Street, right? So I can create a Black business and my service or my product could be of such a quality that I can stand toe to toe with any other business. And there is a reason why people now want to patronize my business, right? Because it's better. It's a quality business. My service is quality, and I give great customer service in response to that. And so now I become the quote unquote Black Wall Street. And for me, I know a lot of individuals hang upon, race and color. Again, it's perception, right? So, I believe I have a superiority consciousness, right? So I believe I'm the right color no matter where I go. And that is my mindset, right? Because I'm always looking to bring and add value to whatever I'm engaged in. And who doesn't want value?
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter what color you are, right? So if I'm working for a business, then I'm bringing value, right? Nobody can do what I'm doing. I'm bringing it at a high level of efficiency and productivity that is irreplaceable. Because at everything, if I put my hands to it, I want perfection. I want to be the best at it. I don't care if I'm sweeping the floors and mopping it. I want to see a mirror. I want somebody to walk by and be like, man, I've never seen such floors clean this way. And that becomes a part of your DNA, your fabric, that whatever you put your hands to, you do it well because you take pride in whatever's being done as a reflection of who you are. And so when that happens, it's no longer about color.
Absolutely.
It's about bringing an added value.
And you said a very important word. You said a superiority complex. And I like that because it gives us the opportunity to assume the best about ourselves.
Absolutely.
As opposed to assuming the worst, which is sometimes what some people do without even recognizing that that's what they're doing. So that's a great note for us to kind of end.
And another thing, there's never any problems. I don't look at any problems. There's always opportunities, right? And that's, again, perception. It's self-identity, how I perceive life, how I perceive myself. So let's say a person is prejudiced and they have these biases and they're racist. Well, you've seen a black male in one light. That's your perception. That's the image you have. So now I have the opportunity to show you how I really am. Right? And how you're perceiving or judging all blacks to be equal or the same, which in your view is negative, to now seeing another black who's adding value, who's very positive, who is not going to let you dictate to them or myself what I can and cannot have.
Absolutely.
There's always opportunity. Absolutely. You know, I when I used to be in corporate America, one of the things that I would do when I got sent to another department, you know, I'm there in that department or I'm new to the department, I would go to my boss. Before he was able to give me an assignment, I would go to him and say, hey, you know, what's the 3 top problems that you have not been able to solve that you may have been dealing with for, you know, last 3, 5, 10 years? And so they begin to sit back and think about it. It's like, wow, you know, we had the same problem for 10 years, or this problem was existent before I got here. Then I would listen to it and say, hey, can I have those 3 problems? Give me those 3 problems. Give me a year. Give me the resources, you know, whether that's a budget or whether that's people, and I can get it solved. Not I would try to get it solved. I will get it solved. And in every case, that's what I did. And that's how I was able to get on a fast track, even in corporate America. And so it's that initiative, that drive, that perception that I believe everyone has the decision to do it or not do it. And if you don't do it, you can't complain about your life.
Absolutely.
If you do it, you get to shape your life.
Absolutely. Great information. And I just want to remind everybody that you can go to Dr. John Beckem's blog. It's at drjohnbeckem.com or personalfinanceblueprint.com. And also, again, you can, once you sign up and get into that, when we get the first course running, which there'll be many more at Dr. John Beckem is the founder of the Personal Finance Institute, which is, again, basically just more information about how to empower yourself, starting with, and again, I always joke that I have a front row seat. Whatever Dr. John Beckem is teaching, I have a front row seat. But to empower yourself to personal finance, wealth building, and change your life, like he says, rather than actually just talking about it, you can get the information, you can match it with your behavior, and then things can start to happen.
Absolutely. The first thing you want to do is get rid of excuses. You know, excuses are the tools of the incompetent that build monuments and bridges to nowhere. And individuals who utilize these tools of incompetence are masters of absolutely nothing. Excuses are like buttholes. Everybody has one, and they all stink.
Absolutely. So again, guys, drjohnbeckem.com. You can obviously find me at themochamoguls.com. And I just want to say thank you, Dr. Beckem. And also remind everybody who's seeing this that you're getting access to some very valuable information that he likes to sometimes bring it up when we're having conversations. Like, look, my running rate is $500 an hour. So guys, and will probably turn out to be a 30-minute segment. You're getting $250 worth of information. I'm happy to say that I facilitated that. So thank you, Dr. Beckem, and thank you guys for watching.
My pleasure. If this can help someone, I'm more than happy to do it.
Yes, thank you so much.